Welcome to episode 2 of Cultivate Talk, the show where we explore the breadth and depth of human communication, from relationships to health and science to pop culture, rhetoric, and more. I'm Emily, the host of Cultivate Talk, and today's guest is Dr. Emily Fender, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Pennsylvania and a science communicator. Her work digs into how misinformation and wellness trends about women's health spread on social media, and how these messages shape beliefs and behaviors. We get into the challenges of separating fact from fiction online, the role communication plays in health equity, and why evidence-based information matters now more than ever. Let's jump in. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the episode with our first segment, Field Notes. Field Notes is a segment where we take a closer look at how communication works and looks in the real world. Each episode, I'll unpack a question or theme, and drawing on theory, research, and/or lived experience, explore what's really shaping our conversations, behaviors, and relationships. So to set the foundation for my conversation with Dr. Fender, I want to take a few minutes to kind of unpack the role social media has in creating and allowing spaces where health messages can be communicated. Since the beginning of the new media age and when social media became something and definitely a communicative platform for a variety of different relationships and in a variety of different ways, it has been criticized for the negative impact it can have on a person's overall well-being, their mental health, their attention span, relationships, and so on. But at the same time, the benefits and positives of social media have also been discussed in terms of what it brings to the table for an individual. Perhaps that's connection with people, perhaps that is professional development, resources that help them in a variety of areas of life, and so on. So there are pros and cons to social media. And this is going to look different for everyone in terms of what benefits them and what does not benefit them. But in the case of health messages, since that is such a big part of social media now, with so many different influencers communicating a variety of different things in regards to health in general or women's health, I want to kind of unpack what does this look like in terms of pros and cons. So we're going to start with the pros in terms of what social media contributes to somebody when it comes to health messages or when it comes to health communication in general, having its place in the realm of social media. So it can create a space of social support. So it can be really helpful, and it kind of acts as this informal social support group, but it can be really helpful for individuals to be able to know and hear information that pertains to them and their current health diagnosis or their overall general health that resonates with other people, or they know that other people are also experiencing alongside with them. That can feel supportive. That can feel like solidarity. It can feel like I'm not in this alone. Whatever it is I'm going through, there are other people also going through it, and I am able to connect with them on social media, or I'm able to read their posts or watch their videos and know that I'm not alone. And that can be incredibly beneficial. In the research of social support, we know and we consistently see that one of the top elements of social support is the effect that it has on a person's well-being, the support receiver. So, of course, this is going to be beneficial because knowing that other people are going through the same thing feels supportive because we're not alone. We know that this exists in the worlds and lives of other people, and they're making it, or they found these resources that help them, or they found maybe this treatment that helped them, and that feels helpful and hopeful and provides reassurance, and therefore it contributes positively to a person's mental health and well-being through the lens of social support. Additionally, social media has provided a space where a variety of different health topics can be discussed, including, ones that are stigmatized. So it again provides space where these discussions that probably should have been had all along are now recorded and posted on social media for an entire audience. So this can be people who are really well informed in the topic, but maybe never had space to talk about it. Or these can be people who are pretty uneducated in the topic, but need to know more because it pertains to their health. Or perhaps just need to know more to be a supportive relative or a supportive human being to someone they know who's going through this particular health situation. So those conversations obviously are important not only in the realm of education, but to destigmatize them and to open the eyes and knowledge of people, knowing that they're not alone and they're not the only ones going through a particular health situation. They can be rest assured that they're part of a group where many people are experiencing the same thing. And even though they don't feel like maybe they can talk about it in their inner circle or with people in their world, there is a world online in which they can learn more about it. They can share their personal experience, they can talk about it, and they can feel a part of something and feel safe and reassured in that way. And then additionally, social media does have the opportunity, of course, if done ethically, to provide information that may not be accessible to everyone, or perhaps people don't necessarily know how to access certain information pertaining to their health. So it can share interesting information, but also information that's really important to someone's health. So maybe they come across a video or a post on a particular symptom and then realize that they have been experiencing that symptom, and that kind of sets off a light bulb inside them that, hey, I should get checked out, or I should look into this more. And it kind of turns into this ripple effect of them, getting the treatment they need before it got worse, or seeking out information so they learned more about it, and so on. So this is a benefit of social media. If done ethically and done accurately, it can spread information that can absolutely change people's lives for the better, or even save somebody's life. And then there are the downfalls of health messages being communicated on social media. The first being the lack of credentials needed to post such information. So anybody can put anything in their bios. And oftentimes when we see health messages communicated, you can go to the bio, and sometimes we see links to medical professionals and the work that they do, the research they do, their own practices. And other times we see influencers who maybe just put that they are a mental health expert or an expert in any given health condition that allows them enough credibility to post health information without people thinking that they're just some random person on social media doing so. And so this can be dangerous because we may be seeing health information from people who are not well versed in this, or who are not experts in their field, or even well educated enough to speak to the volumes of people that they do pertaining to a certain health topic. And so this is something we see across the board with social media, and something that we have to be careful about is, where is this information coming from, but specifically, who is this information coming from? And is this particular person affiliated with a brand or a product that they are trying to promote? And therefore, there is really no credible health information to back it up, but it's more so from a consumer standpoint in trying to get their audience to purchase a certain supplement or purchase a certain tool or something that they are making claims about that will be beneficial to somebody's overall health and well-being. So the lack of credentials needed to post such information is definitely one of the downfalls of health messages being communicated on social media. Another is that everyone's health is different. So when we see these general claims about health, it can be really confusing for many people when what they said in a particular post or video doesn't work for them. But that's because every body is literally different. So how every body responds to treatment or responds to certain supplements, lifestyles, diets, and so on, it's going to be different because of just our own genetic makeup. So this can also be really dangerous because it can put people in harm's way if they're trying something that really just doesn't resonate, or something their body really just doesn't respond to. But it can also lead to frustration, and it can lead to maybe a health condition getting worse, or it can lead to someone's mental health kind of taking a hit because what they thought would work and what they had so much hope in is failing them. And this is because we see so much general information, but it's not necessarily tailored toward every specific body context and kind of what works for every body type. Some influencers and people on social media are really good at leading with, or at least including that disclaimer that you should seek additional medical professional advice, or this is something you should talk to your doctor about, or you should do more research on your own. But this is something that's not in every video or every post, and that's where it gets unethical and dangerous because, again, everybody is different, and therefore that information should be taken with a grain of salt until more research is done or more conversations with medical professionals are had. And then the third downfall of health messages being communicated on social media is the risk of someone not seeking intervention when they should. So perhaps a particular post or video is very reassuring or provides a great deal of hope for an individual in relation to their own personal health diagnoses, and because of that, they don't necessarily go to the doctor as soon as they should, or maybe they avoid the doctor completely because what they read or watched online was enough for them to feel okay moving forward. But there is that risk of people, again, not taking that information with a grain of salt and thinking that it applies to every single body type and every single genetic makeup, and that's simply not being the case. And so there is that risk of sharing such information, and because of that, providing false hope within an individual and them not seeking medical help or medical attention when they should, and a condition getting worse or simply putting their body in grave danger. Beyond the 3 pros and cons that I just shared, there are a variety. This is a topic that can be discussed ongoingly and for an incredibly long amount of time, longer than this episode will allow. But I kind of just wanted to give a snapshot before our conversation with Dr. Emily Fender about the pros and cons of such information being communicated on social media in general. And of course, this is going to look differently for every topic discussed on social media, but health messages in particular are really important to take a look at because social media is such a large part of so many lives and so much information is being communicated there. But when it comes to our well-being and our health, that's really important to take a look at because that misinformation can be detrimental to a person's health. So before we get into the conversation with Dr. Fender, I'm transitioning to the second segment of this episode, which is Data to Dialogue. And the mailbag question that we are going to unpack this week is, when I see women's health advice online, what's the easiest way to know if it's legit or misinformation? And this is obviously a really good question to have, especially with this topic of health messages being communicated on social media. This is something that I dive into with Dr. Fender, but for the sake of this segment and the sake of it just being a really important topic, I kind of wanted to give you a quick overview on this. So first, look at the source. Now, a few minutes ago, we just talked about how anybody can put anything in a bio, but this requires just a little bit more digging to see where this information is coming from. So is it coming from a doctor or a researcher or a health organization? These are the things we want to be on the lookout for. Or is it coming from an influencer who is trying to sell a product based on a particular health belief or a health idea, where they are just trying to gain something from you believing in the message that they posted? So this takes a little bit of digging in terms of kind of taking a look at the account, maybe obviously looking at the bio, links affiliated with them, and kind of just doing a little browsing of their posts to see if products are pushed and in the way that they are pushed, and also who that particular poster is. So are they part of a health organization? Are they a health organization themselves? Are they a doctor? Did they go to medical school? All these little details that can help us understand where this information is coming from and the angle that it is coming from. Second, check the advice. Legitimate health advice usually points back to research or trusted medical organizations. So again, this might take a few minutes of your time, but you can kind of take a look at the references and the references that should be provided on the post, or do a quick Google search to see what the research backs up in terms of the particular argument or the particular health message that's being communicated by that influencer, doctor, research, or whoever is posting the information on social media. And then watch out for absolutes. So phrases like miracle cure or always or never are big red flags. Real science is more nuanced and it acknowledges what works for one person might not work for another person. What we were just discussing a few minutes ago in terms of every body is different. So real science information and legitimate posts are going to feature that disclaimer that this might work for a certain percentage of people, but it might not work for the other percentage of people. And to be sure to talk to your medical provider or to seek additional medical advice before trying any supplement or any lifestyle or anything that the video or that particular post is sharing information with you about. And then cross-check. Again, this is something that does take a few minutes of your time, but it can be relatively short just to find additional information on Google and to kind of just check if that the information that's being shared on that social media post is true, or if there are holes within their argument or holes within their health messages, or if it is kind of just reliant on the situation or dependent on the type of person or that person's health in terms of if that health message applies to them. So usually you can find this information from legitimate sources and legitimate health organizations through a quick Google search like Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic or the CDC, just to kind of back up that information to tell yourself or to share, to teach yourself that if it is legitimate and it can be trusted or if it should be taken with a grain of salt. So kind of like a bottom line here is if it sounds too good to be true or if it's oversimplified, it probably is, but it absolutely doesn't hurt to do your own research. I know that might seem like a lot of work throughout our day or in certain situations, but just 30 seconds can kind of provide you with additional research or just additional resources or kind of just an overall better, bigger picture of what the idea is that they are sharing and kind of all the facts that are absolutely attached to it or things that might not be so true about it. And that brings us to today's guest, someone who's doing this work on the front line of research and communication. Dr. Emily Fender is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Pennsylvania who studies misinformation and women's wellness trends on social media. She's also a science communicator who brings those insights to the public. I had the chance to sit down with her to talk about how misinformation spreads, what it means for health equity, and how we can all be smarter consumers of online content. Here's our conversation. Today's guest is Dr. Emily Fender, a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Pennsylvania, and a powerhouse science communicator working at the intersection of research, health, and social media. Her work focuses on how women's wellness trends and misinformation spreads online, especially through platforms like Instagram and TikTok. Using a combination of content analysis and experimental research, Dr. Fender studies how these messages shape people's health beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. Her ultimate goal? To promote evidence-based care and challenge harmful narratives, especially the ones that quietly go viral. On social media, she brings her research directly to the public, breaking down myths about everything from periods to pap smears in accessible, thoughtful ways. If you're interested in digital health, communication strategy, or how science can and should push back against pseudoscience, this conversation is for you. So thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Fender. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
That's great. I'm super happy to get the chance to talk to you today. And kind of kick things off, I just want to get to know a little bit more about your background. So can you tell us what led you to focus your research on women's health messaging, especially in the social media space?
Yeah, so during my PhD, it was the first or second year of my PhD. I was following a bunch of influencers on Instagram, and I noticed a common trend in all of them, and they were talking about discontinuing hormonal contraceptives because they said that they were poisonous and would for sure cause cancer in women. And of course, I thought, wow, I'm seeing this a lot. Is it just my algorithm or is this actually true? Like, is this a common thing that's happening across wellness influencers in the social media landscape? And so I did a study and I found that 74% of the influencers, we were looking at YouTube in this example, were talking about the discontinuation of hormonal contraceptives and promoting the most common reason for that discontinuation was that women need to be more natural. And I just found that rhetoric absolutely fascinating. And that's where it all started. And that's where it ultimately took off.
That's amazing. I love it when researchers use social media in the way that you have, in terms of kind of analyzing and taking a look at those messages and the rhetoric and discourse of really important information, but how easy it is to kind of not necessarily receive accurate information. So, you use content analysis as a key method in your research. For folks who might not know, what does that involve and what kind of insights does it give you?
So, content analysis is a method that answers descriptive questions, which basically are what messages are in the content. So, it could be applied to a social media platform, what messages are prevalent about pap smears, about contraception. We could even content analyze newspaper articles or medical pamphlets. And we're just looking for what percentage of this concept or this idea is in these sources of information. And so when I content analyze, I create a code book, a bunch of different ideas that I think could be in the content. And then I go through with a partner because we love rigor. And we code typically 0 for no, not present, 1 for yes, present. And we use that data to then draw conclusions about what types of messages are in the content we're examining.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. And your work examines how messages about contraception, periods, pap smears, and other topics show up online. What trends are you seeing, especially in how influencers communicate these issues?
So we covered the contraception one, that they encourage discontinuation because it's not natural and causes a lot of issues and side effects, which I'm not downplaying that. Many women do experience side effects, but not all of us do. I always say that if hormonal contraceptives are not for you, please find the autonomy to figure out what does.
Yeah.
But that's a trend that we've seen. With pap smears, we're seeing lots of women talking about how horrific pap smears are, using very strong fear-based messaging, filming their facial expressions during the exam, usually lots of painful facial expressions, which again, I'm not saying that, it doesn't cause pain, because for some women it does. We all have different bodies, but it is fear-based messaging that could potentially scare people out of keeping up with pap smears or getting their first pap smear. We're seeing a lot of trending cycle syncing content, which is not evidence-based information, claiming that women should eat and exercise in alignment with the 4 menstrual cycle phases. I'm working with and in connection or in collaboration with some people at other universities who are physiologists, who are actually studying this from a physiological standpoint. And they are showing no differences in muscle mass, muscle building, or endurance by menstrual cycle phase. And so those are some of the trends. I'm trying to think, with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, lots of actually really helpful content about symptoms and about treatments that have worked for them. So definitely more on the lens of health promotion for that. Preeclampsia, pregnancy, maternal health, perinatal mental health, lots of trending content that's primarily fear-based with those topics.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like those are all things that I've seen in recent years in regards to influencers pushing messages, especially the cycle syncing one. I feel like that came out of nowhere somewhat, right, like somewhat recently. And I don't think it was something that was necessarily talked about, which we obviously see a lot with these types of messages that are being pushed on social media. They often can come out of nowhere. But that one has really been fascinating to me because I did wonder if there was any actual backed up evidence of this being accurate, or kind of like it depends on the body type of thing, or what the story is behind that. But it's funny that you brought that one up because I see it constantly.
Yeah, that one's really interesting. In one of the studies that I did, we found that they were recommending specific supplements during certain phases. So they were the recommendation was to take a supplement for 1 week out of the month. So for example, during the menstrual phase, you should for that week be taking an iron supplement, which I'm not a dietitian or a physiologist.
Right.
However, what we do know is that supplements don't work like that. And also, everyone's body is unique and different. And to say that all women need an iron supplement during their menstrual phase is highly inaccurate. It's the one size fits all approach to health that is the issue with social media trends.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of just like piggybacking off of that with a impromptu question, do you find that most influencers or most of the, the reels and the TikToks that we're seeing, do they do a good job of saying or kind of like giving that disclosure of like, I'm not a dietitian or I don't have a background in this or this is what worked for my body, your body may totally be different? Because I feel like this is just based on personal experience. Like when I'm scrolling and I'm seeing these videos, it's not necessarily like maybe 50% at best. I'm seeing that. Otherwise, it's like on the lower side for me. And that's just my experience. I don't know if that's something that you have seen or like common sense tells me that disclosure is very important when you're creating content like this or trying to create content like this. But what are you seeing in that regard?
We did a content analysis of what I eat in a day videos, and this ended up not being in the study because we just had the publication because we had so much information to put in the publication. But when I did the analysis, it was 4% gave a disclosure.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's amazing that you guys did a study on that because, yeah, those videos are also obviously a huge social media trend and what we're seeing. So great. What are some of the most common types of misinformation you find in wellness posts in relation to women's health?
Most common types of misinformation.
Yeah.
So, this is a new space that I'm breaking into. A lot of my content analysis work before I got to the University of Pennsylvania insinuated that it was misinformation, but I didn't actually have physicians on the team to identify the codes we were capturing in the analysis and say yes or no, that's misinformation. The most recent study I did in collaboration with physicians at Penn, which is going out for peer review in the next couple of weeks, it's completely written. We found that 1 in 6 posts about preeclampsia were misinformation. We found that this was equally as common in people we coded as medical professionals on social media as it was with influencers, which, this is all fresh information. This isn't 100%, this isn't like peer reviewed yet, but
Right.
it's just a couple of descriptive statistics. I don't know where you could go wrong in that analysis, but it's very interesting because it begs the question, are people identifying as health professionals on social media and they really don't have concrete, credible credentials? Or do we have an issue of different levels of medical professionals sharing information that ends up being misinformation because it's probably outside the realm of their expertise?
Yeah.
And so it asks some very important and interesting questions about who these creators really are, what their credentials are. Is it a health certificate, wellness, like a health wellness certificate or health coach that's claiming to be a medical professional? They got a certificate online over the course of two months, or are we actually talking about a board certified, like went to medical school, did residency physician? And I think that those are being conflated online, and it's very interesting.
Oh, it's so interesting. This is something we constantly talk about in my health comm classes is that anybody can say they're a health professional on social media. It goes back to the very basis of you can almost say anything on social media with the lack of consequence because of the anonymity that you're able to create and just, the lack of accountability. So it is fascinating and really opens up that conversation from a general social media standpoint of just how dangerous platforms can be. So that is fascinating. I'm excited for that new publication, though. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to see it
That's
go
a
through the
good one.
process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good one. So you've been vocal about dismantling harmful wellness trends. Can you share an example of a trend that may look empowering on the surface but is actually misleading or dangerous?
The best one I can think of is cycle syncing. And we actually did a study to ask college students at a mid-Atlantic university what they thought of cycle syncing. And one of the key themes that came out, it was a qualitative focus group study, was that women are hungry for medical information that is specifically tailored to the female body because there's a lot of information out there on social media being pushed that women are neglected from clinical trials and from research in general, which we do know that there were limitations up until the 90s, but we have made a lot of progress in including women in research. But that narrative, with some truth to it, right, is fueling this idea and this hunger among women for medical advice tailored to their bodies. And when we have a trend come out like cycle syncing that says women are very unique and special physiologically, and they have these four menstrual cycle phases, and they should be eating and exercising differently based on those, it's a very appealing trend. And that's what makes it so easy to spread because it's feeding into this. We finally have a trend, or we finally have an approach for women that they can feel is tailored health advice. But all of the research is showing that it's not as um, rigorous and scientifically based as what a lot of people on social media are saying.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example because I see so many comments under those posts or under those videos of women, sharing like, oh, I feel reassured, or this gives me answers to so many questions about my body that I have, or, so many questions about why my body won't do certain things or why I can't do certain things. And so it definitely has like that aura of empowerment for females. And so, yeah, that makes total sense for sure. And what do you think platforms like Instagram should be doing better when it comes to managing health misinformation? And you can be a bit unrealistic here if you want. Like sometimes when I pose these questions, even to my students, I'm like, you can kind of go off in your own little fairy neverland for a moment and like what would be ideal even if it's might be unrealistic or it's just not feasible, but like what do you think platforms like Instagram could realistically and maybe slightly unrealistically do to manage that health misinformation?
I would love to see them deprioritized from
Yeah.
the algorithm pushing them out even further, but that's driven by engagement, so that's kind of tough. But maybe prioritization and the algorithm pushing information that is deemed to be credible and evidence-based. I could see policies like that being particularly helpful, or even flagging it and having some type of like icon that you can click on that tells you how accurate the post is could be really helpful for people. Even if it is getting high engagement, people can still, click and
Yeah.
see like, how credible is this? Who is the source? Who's this coming from? Who's being cited, and just kind of like a breakdown, which I'm sure there are AI tools in the making that are working on stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, great suggestions because similar to Twitter, like it's relatively easy to get like a certified check mark account on Instagram, isn't it? Like you can almost
Yeah.
just buy it nowadays.
You
So,
you just buy it. Like
yeah.
I do social media, and so many people have said to me, "Why haven't you bought the blue check yet?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Because it's $15 a month. If my
Right.
PhD on my page doesn't tell you that I'm credible and my Google Scholar linked with all of my published articles, if that's not enough and I need to buy a blue check mark, like that's something's very wrong then."
Right, absolutely. But it kind of feeds into this like, okay, well, that's not even a reliable source anymore. And I know on platforms like Twitter, they have like the community notes that people can vote on in terms of like, this might not be reliable information or this is fake. I'm kind of surprised that Instagram doesn't have something, even if it's not perfectly done, but something like that. But you're right, it's probably like a tool in the making. I should at least hope so at this point and where we are with media and technology.
Yeah.
Beyond analyzing messages, you also study how they affect people's attitudes and behaviors. So, what have you learned about messages, good or bad, or how messages, good or bad, shape our health decisions?
So we did two experiments, one on the contraception videos and then one on the what I eat in a day videos. For the contraception, we found that when viewers perceived the influencer to be more credible and more trustworthy. They were more likely to intend to use less effective non hormonal options that could increase risk for pregnancy, though the effect was very small. So let's keep that in mind. So that was interesting. And then we did an experiment for the What I Eat in a Day videos. They were YouTube videos. And we did it in a lab. And we had, I want to say, 280 female college students come into the lab and watch a video. And then a What I Eat in a Day video. And then they answered a bunch of questions. And then on the way out, we didn't tell them why we did this, but on the way out, we said, please select a snack on your way out. Thanks so much for doing a What I Eat in a Day study, right? It goes kind of hand in hand. You did a What I Eat, you watched a What I Eat in a Day. Let's take a snack. And the
Yeah.
snack options were apples or cookies. And so as they left, we were very careful not to let them know that we were writing down what they selected because we didn't want them telling anyone, that it would get out and they would tell everyone about the end of the experiment. And so we documented whether they picked an apple, a cookie, or didn't select any snack at all. And what we ultimately found was that people who saw a sponsored video were actually more likely to select a snack. And after watching the video, those who intended to diet after seeing the influencer in the What I Eat in a Day video were more likely to not select a snack at all.
Wow. That's fascinating. That's such a interesting and really cool way of you guys to kind of get that last measurement in terms of analyzing your audience. That's like really cool.
Yes, it was a lot of fun, but I
Yeah.
think I think someone probably like the message probably got out because I was advertising it in a class trying to get participants to come in, and this one girl was like, "Yeah, and at the end of the study you have," and I was like, "No, please don't. Please don't spoil it. Let's
Yeah,
let's let them
absolutely.
find out for themselves." But yeah, it was a lot of fun. That study is currently under peer review, so hoping to hear back about that soon. But
Yeah, that's super exciting.
yeah, the experiments take a little longer, so I have fewer of those. I'm putting in a grant to do an experiment on the cycle syncing content, which I'm very
Yeah.
excited about.
Yeah. So important too. Absolutely. That is exciting. When it comes to designing effective health communication, what elements tend to resonate most with people, especially on social media? So you've alluded to this a little bit in your responses and in sharing the research that you have already done, but kind of like putting it all together, are there effective ways to resonate with people on social media?
So, one of the things that I've been working on in my content analyses is that I often measure whether or not the content included threat-based messages, so susceptibility to the health condition being talked about, as well as severity of the health condition. And then we also analyze perceived efficacy. So, did the creator make a recommendation to get screening for something? Did the creator provide treatment options? And so, good old extended parallel process model, we use that theory to code the data and the messages in my content analysis work among all these different topics. And it's very interesting to see what performs in terms of engagement. And so not not in all studies, but in a lot of them, the efficacy messages are far fewer
Mhm.
and they receive typically lower engagement. So they're not resonating with people as much. The very thing that could help us overcome health conditions and health challenges is not the type of message that's resonating on social media. It's the threat-based messages. They love severity.
Yeah.
Severity performs very well. Talking about how bad something is will get you engagement. Um, and is what is resonating with people on social media, which is a shame because it could really scare people and not give them the hope or the ability to know what their next step is if they were to experience these health conditions. Um, though the efficacy piece sometimes does perform in the context of saves. So
Mm.
sometimes people will see efficacy messages and save them, which is a positive sign. But for the most part, we see far more threat-based messages with severity performing in terms of like likes, comments, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, my mind immediately kind of went to what you kicked off with in regard to hormonal birth control. And I feel like so many of those videos are threat based in terms of like scaring people into thinking like you do this, you're gonna get cancer. Because again, not many, very many of them are great at that disclosure of like, hey, I'm not an expert in this, or everybody is different, so your body might be different, or even encouraging people to figure out what works for their body. But those are absolutely the videos I feel like that constantly get pushed of like, you don't do XYZ, you're going to get this health condition, or this is going to get worse, or you're going to get cancer, and those types of messages. It's like this ongoing cycle on social media. So yeah, that is fascinating. I had wondered if there was anything like aesthetically that resonated with people. Because I feel like kind of going back to like those what you eat in a day videos, like they're always so almost perfectly packaged in terms of like, this perfectly looking meal 3 times a day, these snacks spaced out, them cooking it. It's like the overall aesthetic of it. I wasn't sure if that had like crossed over into health messages in terms of it resonating with people, if things look more appealing, or if the person's more appealing, or the graphics and music are, or if it really is rooted in that fear based, like those threat based messages.
We haven't really done a lot of, and that comes up all the time in reviews too. We haven't done a lot of analysis on the way the videos look and how they're consumed visually, but that's definitely something that I want to get into because, like you said, it plays such an important role in how people engage with information, the visual component, especially with, like you said, with like the what I eat in a day videos and like there's nothing more visually appealing than food. And so
Right.
that would be that would be a good way to pursue more questions about how the videos impact us.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. Probably endless amount of content for you guys to really analyze and have questions for and kind of work through. So I can only
Yes,
imagine the mountain of that.
there's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So many of the topics you study, like PMDD and perinatal mental health, are either misunderstood or under discussed. So, what do you think is missing from how we talk about women's health in public discourse?
Hmm. One of the things that's missing in terms of you mean like the content depicting this information?
Yeah, like that's a good way to go about it. Yeah. I mean, you can take it pretty generally and in any direction, but that is absolutely a relevant way to take it.
I was having this conversation with a partner of mine, and one of the key things that we think is missing, she's a women's health entrepreneur, getting, women's health researchers and organizations together to provide more evidence-based information, but we constantly have conversations about how all of this content and information lacks nuance.
Hmm.
And so it really is that like one size fits all approach, like all women, like every trend, every thing that's presented online to improve women's health for the most part is a blanket statement that is applied to all women in all
Yeah.
contexts. And it's so shocking that so many women are so into the cycle syncing thing because it provides nuanced, tailored advice for the female body. But when we see these trends, we then can't take a step back and say, well, would this work for every woman?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one of the issues that I'm seeing. I mean, even, there's like lots of online recommendations for, women in pregnancy. And it's like, well, that probably varies, depending on how active you were prior to pregnancy. Like, there's just so many nuanced conversations. And this is why we go and see medical doctors who know our history and
Yeah.
can provide tailored recommendations for our bodies. And that's why health information on social media isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting, kind of like what you were saying about pregnancy. I remember having a conversation about somebody in my PhD program who was a bit older than I, and talking about how there's such an oversaturation of information on social media in regard to pregnancy and parenting, and how that just wasn't necessarily a thing prior to the new media age, obviously. But it's like, okay, does that do more harm or is it better? Is it better that we can Google these questions now and get so many opinions and get an idea of what it could be, and that could be 100 different things, whether your kid is sick or whether you're feeling something strange during pregnancy? Or was it better back before the new media age when we didn't have all of these resources at the tips of our fingers? I think for on one end, like you can Google something and find medical journals or find medical websites, things that are a bit more credible. That might be helpful. But kind of like with what you study, like so many people making videos and reels and posts about how they feel during pregnancy or how they parent or how their mental health is after giving birth and all of these different things, like that side of oversaturation, I imagine might be overwhelming and might do more harm than people who got pregnant and parented prior to the new media age. So that is like a really interesting kind of angle on it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's what's contributing. We see all these studies that say social media is like leading to increased levels of anxiety. Yeah,
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
sense because there's tons of wild information out there and nobody knows what to do. I get so many comments on my social media about, can you provide information about this or about this? There's just so much out there and I don't know where to go to find the right information. And, a lot of the time I'm not even qualified to provide that information because I'm not a physician. And
Yeah.
so there's a real need for it.
Yeah, there is absolutely a need for it because the oversaturation can be really overwhelming. Like I know my entire algorithm right now is like a bunch of supplements I should be taking and a bunch of different blood tests I should take to ensure that I don't have certain genes that will end up with cancer or Alzheimer's. And it's really overwhelming. It's like I clicked on one, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if it's true. And then the
Yeah.
algorithm does its work, and now it's literally flooding me. I'm like, this is a lot. Now I feel like I don't do enough, but maybe I'm already doing too much. And so, yeah, it can absolutely contribute to like that general health anxiety and then health anxiety, that general health anxiety and then anxiety in general.
Yeah.
So it is. It's an interesting time in terms of like health messages. But if you could give people just one tip for navigating women's health information online, what would it be?
Stay away from people who create a problem that you didn't know and then try to sell you a solution to fix it.
That's great. Absolutely. Very important too. We're just going to highlight that for the podcast promotion because incredibly important. Um, and then kind of like to wrap it up, finally, what gives you hope when it comes to improving how we talk about women's health?
All of the incredible people I've met since starting my Instagram and growing on Instagram who care about women's health misinformation, who care about women's health in general, and who want to bring evidence based people together, as well as women who may not be scientists or researchers or physicians who want to find like accessible, good quality information that they can actually trust. It's all of those connections that I've been making online. I've just been so excited by the number of people who want to do this work and who prioritize it. I'm just very grateful for that and really excited. And it gives me a lot of hope that this is absolutely a priority for people.
Yeah, absolutely. This is amazing work that you are doing, and I'm so excited for everything that you are going to publish, everything you're going to continue studying and analyzing in your future. But before I let you go, can you tell people where they can find you if they want to check out your content, your work, kind of get in touch with you if they have questions about your work? And if you could just tell us where we could find you, and then I will ensure that it is also listed where people can see it.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm just Emily Fender on Instagram. Every time I publish a new study, I create a reel and talk about the findings. And I post updates in my stories every day about the new progress on different research and studies that I'm doing. So you can find all of my updates there. My Google Scholar is linked there. Everything is right there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Fender. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much. This is great.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Cultivate Talk. I'm so grateful you joined me for this conversation, and I hope it gave you new perspective on how women's health, communication, and social media intersect in powerful and sometimes complicated ways. A huge thank you to Dr. Emily Fender for sharing her insights and research, and to you for listening and being part of this dialogue. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss what's next. We have more incredible guests and thought-provoking topics on the horizon. Until then, take care of yourself and keep cultivating conversations that matter.